Inside a train that had departed from London and was now bound for Liverpool, Yaya was whispering incantations of enchantment into Raishin, who was asleep. Suddenly, Yaya stops as Raishin awakens and asks her what she was whispering to his ear. Yaya answers that she was just reciting a charm to make him fall in love with her. Raishin retorts back, but Yaya ignores him, excitedly pointing out to him that they will soon be inside Machine City. Raishin and Yaya then continued their playful banter as a little girl, sitting together with her elder sister across them, laughed at their comical exchange. Suddenly, the train began to shudder. It pulled into Edgehill Station but passed through on, causing the passengers to become restless. Raishin commanded Yaya to head to the train's brakes, and Yaya then nimbly exited through their cabin's window, making her way to the top of the carriage as Raishin followed shortly after. Yaya headed to each of the carriage's brakes, pulling down each of the brake levers, but the train did not stop. Raishin finally caught up to Yaya and together with her, then swiftly ran in the form of acrobatics to the front of the train as the train then finally reached and pulled into Lime Street Station. Yaya leapt down onto the tracks, facing towards the front of the train, and held back the train as Raishin then used Shinken Shijuhishu on her, causing the carriages behind to propel forward in succession, but the train completely halted. After the train incident, at the station's concourse, Raishin asked the little girl if she was hurt. The little girl replied that she was fine, thanked him, and asked him if he was a mage. Raishin dissented and replied that he was a puppeteer. Raishin and Yaya entered the academy. After Raishin and Yaya had left the scene, they were walking along the street when Raishin asked Yaya what the dark emotion swirling inside of him was. Yaya teasingly answered that it was sexual frustration. Raishin interjectingly exclaimed back that it was rage and then scolded her as she then defended herself. Raishin, testing Yaya's resolve before entering, reminded her that once she enters the academy she will not be able to leave the premises until he graduates. Without hesitating, Yaya cheerfully exclaimed her resolve. Dusk, in the dim hallway of the central auditorium, Yaya awaited Raishin, who was in the staff room taking the transfer admission test. He came out of the room downcast and disappointed as Yaya approached him and asked him of his test result. Raishin answered her and handed the result to her. Yaya, after reading it, tried consoling Raishin. Kimberly came out of the staff room and suddenly interposed and introduced herself. As Raishin and Yaya were searching for their dormitory, Raishin contemplated on his conversation with Kimberly. Kimberly then gave Raishin some advice. Raishin consulted Kimberly on another way to enter the night party. Kimberly asked Raishin why he was fixated with the night party, and Raishin replied that he wanted to be a wise man. Kimberly saw Raishin's determination, and as she was about to turn away, hinted him of another way, then finally left. After Raishin did, he and Yaya stopped by a dormitory when Charlotte, who approached from behind them, suddenly interposed, rudely informed them that they are in the girls' dormitory, and peremptorily demanded them to give way to her. Evening, they finally arrived in their dormitory, and inside their room, lying on his bed, Raishin reflected on what Kimberly had said and then announced his next course of action to Yaya. Charlotte and Raishin having a teasing exchange. The next day, on Main Street, Charlotte was walking along the street having her usual banter with Sigmund, who was resting on her shoulder. Suddenly, Raishin interposed, greeting Charlotte, and then recited her profile. Charlotte then asked Raishin what he wanted from her, and Raishin then challengingly answered her. At the battlefield, seated on the battlefield sitting area, the surrounding crowd of students buzzed about Raishin challenging Charlotte into a battle. Charlotte then acknowledged Raishin's determination, accepted his challenge, and then commanded Sigmund. At that instant, Sigmund transformed into his huge original form. Charlotte then commanded him to launch Luster Cannon, hitting the harpy on her wing. A golem next attacked, swinging its fist on Sigmund, causing Charlotte to be flung away. The golem then attacked again, swinging its fist on Sigmund, but Yaya blocked it before it hit him as Raishin then caught Charlotte. The attackers, a group of students, finally appeared from the mist. The group's leader then argued with Raishin, and as the group's leader and Raishin were, a witch ambushed attacked Raishin, but Yaya covered him, both appearing completely unharmed. Raishin then used Kuin Jiniketsu on Yaya. Yaya burst towards the witch and thrust her fist onto her. Raishin then dashed into the group's automata's midst as Yaya followed after, and together with her, attacked them. As they were, Charlotte instructed Sigmund to rise and commanded him to launch Luster Flare. The group's automata were caught up in the blast, each being hit in different parts of their bodies. Charlotte then asked Raishin for his name, and Raishin complied. Charlotte was about to continue her fight with Raishin, but Raishin declined her, threw a smoke bomb, and ran off, along with Yaya, a considerable distance away from her. Past midnight, in a grove of trees hidden from any sight at the outskirts of a garden inside the campus, a figure devoured messily an automaton with great gusto. Inside the cafeteria, Charlotte jumped out from the window that Raishin had Yaya broken and headed towards the street as Sigmund followed after. On the street was Raishin, together with Yaya, confronting Magnus. Kamakiri and Hataru stepped in front of Magnus in a protective measure, and as they did, Hataru's cloth mask fluttered, enabling Raishin to see her excessively resemble Nadeshiko. Suddenly, a horrific sight flashed before Raishin's eyes. The scene was ablaze and Raishin was searching for Nadeshiko, repeatedly calling out to her. As he entered a room, he was dazed to see the piled corpses of his relatives and their automata. Amidst the room was an altar, and near the altar was the dead body of Raishin's father, and on top of it was the dead body of Nadeshiko. As Raishin was lost in his thought, Magnus started to leave, but Raishin intercepted. Magnus then asked Raishin who he was, and Raishin answered that he traveled half around the world for him. Magnus replied that he had mistaken him for someone else. Raishin apathetically answered back and then sharply announced that he wanted to give him something. In a split second, Kamakiri warped the rest of the squadron, and together with them, surrounded Raishin, holding their weapons against his throat, surprising Charlotte and Yaya. Raishin clarified that he only wanted to give Magnus a token for their new acquaintanceship, and Magnus' squadron withdrew. Hataru took the small bottle from Raishin and gave it to Magnus. Inside the bathroom of Raishin's room in the tortoise dormitory, as Raishin was taking a shower, he was still downcast at his realization as Yaya quietly concernedly listened behind the Japanese screen. At the hallway of the Faculty of Science, Felix was awaiting Raishin. Felix then asked Raishin to work with him, but Raishin swiftly refused and started to leave. Felix intercepted, offering him an entry as a deal, catching Raishin's attention, and remarked for them to discuss about it after school. Inside a lecture hall in the Faculty of Science, amidst Kimberly's lecture, Raishin contemplated on Felix's proposal. After the students left the lecture room as well, Charlotte noticed through a window Raishin's meeting with Felix. Sigmund suddenly interposed, asking Charlotte if she was interested with Raishin, but Charlotte misunderstood Sigmund to be referring to Felix and flusteringly defensively declined. Sigmund then clarified that he was referring to Raishin, gave his impression of him, and pointed out his character, making Charlotte realize his point. Inside the disciplinary committee chairman's office, Raishin and Felix discussed about Felix's proposal. Suddenly, Lisette burst into the office, calling out to Felix. She noticed Raishin and apologized for her sudden intrusion. She introduced herself to him and then reported to Felix that there is another case of devoured automaton. Behind the technical vocational building, Charlotte, with Sigmund resting on top of her left shoulder, was onlooking the scene when Raishin, Felix, Lisette, and Yaya arrived. Raishin observing Morning Star Wielder's dead body. Raishin entered it as well, and after seeing the dead body of the devoured automaton, then gave his observations about it, which Felix confirmed. He then inquired about its identity, and Lisette answered that it might be Morning Star Wielder. Raishin assented as he recognized the markings of the iron ball that crushed the legs of the devoured automaton, although found it peculiar that its legs were crushed by its own weapon. As Felix looked upon Charlotte, Charlotte suddenly turned away. Raishin tried stopping Charlotte, but Charlotte dismissed him and left. Felix intervened and asked Raishin if he was finally going to accept his proposal. Raishin assented but that he will do it in his own way and left as Yaya followed after. Lisette bid Felix her dismissal and then followed after Raishin, intercepted him, and asked him if she could talk with him privately. Raishin then ordered Yaya to return first to the tortoise dormitory, and Yaya begrudgingly did. Lisette then led Raishin to a maze and hesitantly warned him of Charlotte. Inside Raishin's room in the tortoise dormitory, Raishin contemplated on Lizette's warning but was suddenly interrupted by Yaya's jealous stare. Yaya tried unzipping his pants, but Raishin evaded her and then announced to her that they will begin hunting cannibal candy tomorrow. Suddenly, Raishin and Yaya heard a sound of something being thrown at Raishin's room's window. Raishin opened the window to see Charlotte. Charlotte embarrassedly asked Raishin on a date, making Yaya dazed. Yaya tried declining Charlotte, but Raishin assented, shocking Yaya. Charlotte then excused herself and left, and after she did, Yaya then strangled Raishin on the neck. The next day, Charlotte, with Sigmund resting on top of her cap, led Raishin, together with a pouting Yaya, to behind the technical vocational building. Raishin was trite at Charlotte's idea of a date. Charlotte then clarified to Raishin that she only asked him on a date to make him a decoy for cannibal candy. Raishin refused and asked her for a proper date, shocking her and Yaya. Raishin pointed an argument, making Charlotte assent. In the city, Raishin and Charlotte strolled around the city. Dusk, at the rooftop of the Liverpool Cathedral, Charlotte remarked that she wanted to return to the academy as she was beginning to feel hungry. Raishin then decided for them to eat in a restaurant instead and that he will treat her. As they walked back to the academy, Raishin thanked Charlotte for helping him decide and choose the present he had just bought. As Raishin and Charlotte were about to enter the academy, Charlotte unexpectedly remarked that she finally somehow understood his reason for targeting her for her entry as she knocked on the door of the academy gates. As the doors of the academy gates opened, Raishin and Charlotte suddenly noticed a commotion happening inside the academy. Raishin was apprehended that Yaya might have been victimized by cannibal candy and swiftly dashed towards the scene as Charlotte called out to Raishin. As Raishin continued swiftly dashing to the scene, he apprehended that Yaya might have been victimized by cannibal candy, and as he arrived at it, Felix noticed Raishin and informed him that cannibal candy devoured another automaton just as Charlotte arrived as well and looked on. Felix indicated Raishin to the dead body of the devoured automaton and then shifted his attention to Charlotte and asked her if she went out of the academy, to which she assented. As Raishin saw the dead body of the devoured automaton, with its puppeteer mourning by it, he concluded that it was not Yaya and recognized it as the Undine. Upon seeing it as well, Charlotte became indignant and impatiently turned away. Felix intercepted Charlotte, remarked that she seemed to be investigating the cannibal candy case as well and advised her that she should stop it and just leave it to the disciplinary committee. As he covertly faintly smirked, he then informed her that he will withdraw from courting her as she had already chosen Raishin and dejectedly turned away as Charlotte tried vindicating herself, but Felix ignored Charlotte and dejectedly walked away as he excused himself and remarked that he does not want to see her for a while, making her aghast and run away. Raishin angrily grabbed onto Felix by his cloak, but Felix appeased him, explained that the reason for his harsh conduct towards Charlotte was to stop her from risking herself to danger and assured him that he will make amends with her after the cannibal candy case was managed. Raishin then returned to the tortoise dormitory, and as he entered his room, Yaya peculiarly cheerfully greeted Raishin and led him to the dinner she had just made, making him doubt it as cooking in the dormitory was impossible. She then began serving him the dinner of empty lacquerware, making Raishin ask Yaya what was wrong with her, to which Yaya dissented. Raishin perceived that Yaya was having a malfunction in her thinking process and tightly hugged her as he apologized to her, making her weep and return to her usual self. He appeased her and then took the package he had just bought and brought out a pair of boots from it, which he presented to her as he explained to her the reason why he bought it. Raishin helped Yaya put it on, making Yaya cry in happiness and after, exuberant, and then explained to her that the reason why he went out on a date with Charlotte was that he wanted to clear his suspicion of her possibly being cannibal candy, as in the meanwhile, Shuko and Irori, where with hidden presences, arrived in the academy and made their way to the tortoise dormitory. As Raishin and Yaya discussed about cannibal candy's mode of operation's sudden queer change, Raishin was able to grasp that Charlotte was being incriminated by cannibal candy. Suddenly, the call bell for a telephone call rang. Raishin, together with Yaya, then went down to the lobby and answered the call. On the other side of the line was Lisette, who informed Raishin that she was looking for Charlotte and apathetically asked him if she might be in the tortoise dormitory, though immediately concluded that she was mistaken and scoffed at him as she hung up on him. Raishin became worried about Charlotte and, together with Yaya, then was about to leave the dormitory, but as he exited it he abruptly halted upon seeing Shuko, who was in front of him, and greeted him, surprising him. Shuko greeted Yaya on her being fine, to which Yaya assented, but Irori suddenly interjected, reproving Yaya from behind her, making her surprised to see her present as well. Raishin, Yaya, Shuko and Irori then headed to Raishin's room, and inside it, Shuko lectured Raishin on his sentimentality, but Raishin stubbornly argued his principle, making Shuko pleased. Shuko then related the Japanese army's investigation on Cannibal Candy's identity and warned Raishin to withdraw, but Raishin resolutely declared that he wanted to help Charlotte, making Shuko pleased. She lectured Raishin of Kongariki's weakness and then consented for him to leave. Raishin then called out to Yaya, and together with her, dashed out of the dormitory. After Raishin and Yaya left, anxious, Irori asked Shuko if she was certain with allowing Raishin and Yaya to leave, and Shuko assured Irori. Irori then asked Shuko if Raishin will be alright, and Shuko assured Irori, stating Raishin's capabilities. 2 years ago, evening, snowing, amidst of the Akabane clan's burnt estates debris, Raishin, macabre and undressed to his waist, intensely rivetingly and forcibly used Kuyakujin to make a wooden doll move, making him exhausted and collapse on his left onto the ground. However, the wooden doll only staggeringly moved a little. Shuko, together with Yaya, who was holding an umbrella for her, accosted Raishin, making Raishin ask Shuko who she was. Raishin and Yaya learn about Charlotte's past from Sigmund. Charlotte's family was distinguished for making automatons, but the family was stripped of everything when the young Prince of Wales was injured by one of her automata. Thus Charlotte attends school on a scholarship and is saving up to buy back the Eve's hearts from her family's automata and hopes to be reunited with her family someday. Lisette is revealed to be Felix's automaton, Eliza, who is capable of absorbing magic abilities from automatons she devours. As she and Yaya fight, Eliza's body turns into mist, trapping Yaya within, but with Yaya's blood spilling on Eliza, the effectiveness of Eliza's attacks decreases as only one type of magic can be utilized at a time and she is destroyed. Following the battle, Raishin is honored and granted entry into the festival despite his poor grades, and Charlotte gives Raishin a pendant with defensive capabilities as a gift for clearing her name. Raishin and Yaya enter their dorm room and see Fry caught in a trap that she had set for Raishin. Later that day, Fry builds another trap by building a cage only to become trapped in it herself. Her brother Loki arrives to warn Raishin that puppeteers have taken notice of him for beating Felix and Eliza and that it would be in his best interest to withdraw from the festival. Raishin refuses. That night, Fry sneaks into Raishin's bed in another assassination attempt, but falls asleep instead. The next day, Charlotte informs Raishin about Divine Works, the shady automaton manufacturer that sponsors Loki and Fry and obtains magic circuit patents through bribery. Frey's automaton rabbi goes rogue and attacks Raishin and is knocked unconscious by a stun grenade. Raishin brings Kamurasaki with him on a reconnaissance mission to the orphanage Loki and Fry grew up in. As they wait, Yaya and Sigmund discuss what being human is all about and Yaya is suddenly attacked. Yaya regains consciousness after being badly damaged by the attack, but is in need of repairs by an expert puppet maker. At the orphanage, Raishin and Kamurasaki meet Yomi, the prototype automaton of the Garm series that is about to be disposed of. Yomi shows them around the orphanage and they learn about Frey's background. They end up in a lab where illegal experiments on humans take place when the alarm sounds. Raishin, Kamurasaki, and Yomi are pursued by the guards through the sewers and Yomi tells them that if Fry loses during the festival, the Garm series of automata will be disposed of and be replaced by the Angel series. Critically wounded after protecting Raishin from gunfire, Yomi sacrifices herself to allow Raishin and Kamurasaki to escape. Raishin meets up with Shoko in his room and she orders him to remove Rabbi's magic circuit. The Walpurgis Night Festival begins with Raishin battling Loki instead of Fry. Raishin is severely wounded after taking the hit from Cherubim, in sword form, to protect Yaya. With Raishin lying unconscious, Loki, realizing that Yaya would fight back aggressively, walks away and opts not to take his glove. Loki is scorned by Bronson for dropping his rank from 7 to 99 to keep Fry out of the fight. Raishin wakes up in the infirmary as the attack missed his vitals. Outside the infirmary, Loki and Fry fight each other. Rabbi goes berserk and starts draining Frey's blood and absorbing its magical power. Just before Rabbi hurts Loki, Raishin intervenes and the two of them stop Rabbi. Raishin learns that Fry is a synthetic white medium, a child with great magic levels due to artificial installation of a magical circuit in her heart. Raishin and Yaya return to the orphanage only to find the Garm automata have already been scrapped. They are ambushed and Loki arrives on the scene. Kimberly brings Fry and Charlotte to the orphanage to observe the fight. Raishin and Loki battle Bronson's automaton, Lucifer, the latest model of the angel automata, who overwhelms Yaya and Cherubim. Bronson explains that he brought Fry and Loki from America to be test subjects for his experiments for the progress of mankind. By working together, Yaya and Cherubim destroy Lucifer as Cherubim engages him in direct combat while Yaya uses explosives hidden in her sleeves to disable his jet circuit. Bronson is about to shoot Raishin and Loki, who have both collapsed from injuries, when Kimberly brings the Crusaders in to arrest Bronson for experimenting on children. Raishin and Loki are brought to the infirmary where Yaya, intent on treating Raishin herself, stirs up trouble. Raishin notices a girl falling from the roof and Yaya saves her, while Charlotte and Sigmund destroy the Academy's clock tower. The girl whom Yaya saved is Charlotte's younger sister, Henriette, who has made several suicide attempts. Realizing that the attack on the clock tower contradicts Charlotte's nature, Raishin goes searching for her. Cedric sends Charlotte to see Raishin with a warning for him to stay away from Henriette. Fry locates Henriette with her automata just before she hangs herself. That night, Raishin is ready to face the 87th ranked puppeteer who does not show up. Henriette makes another suicide attempt but is stopped by Charlotte. Raishin learns from Kimberly that the Academy's headmaster Rutherford is being targeted and he deduces that the King's Fort family is involved. The next day, Raishin spots Rutherford by the ruins of the clock tower and sends Yaya to contact Shoko. He sees Henriette headed towards the ruins and when Sigmund unleashes a luster cannon attack, the ground underneath their feet collapses, causing Raishin and Henriette to fall. Yaya attempts to follow Raishin, but is stopped by Kimberly who warns her that she is being watched. Shin escorts Charlotte back to Cedric, who lashes out at Charlotte for the roundabout approach of her assassination attempt. Raishin and Henriette navigate underground and while resting, they find common ground as both were considered to be inferior siblings. They later encounter Magnus and one of his automata who resembles Nadeshiko, as well as Rutherford. Shin attacks Raishin but Magnus' automaton intervenes and forces Shin to retreat. Back on the surface, Raishin is reunited with Yaya. Back in the dorm, Raishin tells Yaya that his late parents had arranged for a marriage for him. That night, Raishin's opponent for the festival fails to show up for the third straight night and he devises a plan to draw out the conspirators by kidnapping Henriette. Cedric orders Shin to retrieve Henriette and kill Raishin, while Cedric tortures Charlotte as a way to satisfy Felix. Shin approaches Raishin and engages him in battle. Shin wounds Raishin but retreats due to the unexpected appearance of Loki and Fry. Back at the infirmary, Henriette tells Raishin that she is at fault for letting the automaton that attacked the Prince of Wales go rogue and also tells him that she had been trying to kill herself so that Charlotte would not be burdened with her life. Meanwhile, Sigmund begs Charlotte to stop the assassination and Raishin arrives to tell her that killing Rutherford will make her dream of restoring her family's status impossible. Unable to see things Raishin's way, Sigmund and Yaya fight. Raishin knocks Charlotte off Sigmund and finally convinces her to stop the assassination. Shin appears and calls himself a divine being called a machine doll for being able to operate without a puppeteer supplying magic. Shoko recalls the past when she gave Raishin a new lease on life on the condition that he kill Tenzin or else she would use his body parts to build an automaton. Before Raishin fights Shin, Charlotte tells Fry the truth about her situation to keep Raishin from putting himself in danger. During the battle, Raishin gets Shin to attack from behind where Yaya is waiting for him. She slams Shin into a brick wall and repeatedly throws punches to immobilize him. Sigmund follows up by firing his luster cannon. Shin dodges the attack, thereby confirming the presence of his puppeteer as he could not have dodged the attack without a puppeteer resupplying him with magic. Fry locates Cedric and Yaya activates her final stronghold ability to defeat Shin. Cedric and Shin retreat, and Cedric reveals herself to be the 87th ranked puppeteer, Alice Bernstein. Having watched the battle from a distance, Kimberly warns Magnus that as Tenzin Akabane he is being closely watched and that manufacturing human life is magic's greatest taboo. The next day, Raishin recovers in the infirmary and the girls stir up a big commotion over Raishin's presumed preference over girls with large breasts, which greatly upsets Charlotte. Kimberly drops by to inform Raishin that the clock tower will be rebuilt using the Baloo family fortune that was confiscated and frozen following the incident and that Henriette's enrollment has been voided but that she will remain at the academy as Cruel's lab assistant. After everybody but Yaya leaves, Yaya expresses her concern about having to face her friends, but Raishin maintains his optimism, which Yaya interprets as a declaration of love.